today, yeah, as Jake mentioned, I'm going to cover three topics. I'm actually going to ask you which one you prefer the most. But I'll give you a bit of hello. I'll give you a bit of an introduction first. So if we can, oh yeah, look at it. The slides are already there. So I'm Roberto Geroli. I work at Creative Assembly. So if you don't know us, we work on a long running series called Total War. It's a strategy game which combines a bit of like turn-based campaign setting and then real-time battles. And we have like a historical setting. So you might have heard of Three Kingdoms of Pharaoh that we released recently, and a fantasy stream based on the Warhammer IP. We also worked on other titles. At the moment, we're working on a sequel for Alien Isolation, and yeah, on some unannounced projects. So that's our company, Creative Assembly. And in terms of a bit of on myself, if you want, so I joined Creative Assembly about 5 years ago. I see the excitement in chat about the sequel to Alien Isolation. And yeah, so Creative Assembly is based in the UK, in Horsham. It's between Brighton and London. And it's been around for quite some time now. We will celebrate 25 years anniversary for Total War this year, but Creative Assembly has been around for 36 years, so it's one of the biggest and longest running game studios in the UK. We also have a studio in Sofia that recently released Pharaoh. So myself, so I lead the core technology group, which is basically the engine team for Total War. So if you're familiar with Unity or Unreal and the commercial engines, we have our own in-house tools at Total War, and I'm responsible for those. I put here on the presentation our mission statement. So we believe that by creating a positive culture, that's what underpins the technology that will allow us to deliver great titles. So I started after studying computer science at uni. I started as a web developer. Then I moved into project management. I worked for about 10, 15 years in that field. And I was lucky to work with some very interesting clients like IKEA, Disney, Marvel Studios. And then about 5 years ago, I got the opportunity to join Creative Assembly. I joined production as a start, and I led the small team of producers working on the Total War engine. And then eventually I got promoted to the role of engine director. And here I am today. I have three topics that I can cover with you today. I can give a quick overview of them all, and probably we'll touch on them all. But I wanted to ask you folks, so you to see a survey, a poll going up for you. So we have three topics. If you want to vote the one that you would prefer to hear the most, we can focus more on that and less on the others. So the first is like for starters, how does it work, the games industry? What is like the game development process, and what are the possible careers that we can take there? The second topic is about more concrete examples from Creative Assembly and Total War. So I can show some screenshots from our engine and some pipelines and tools. And lastly, the third topic is about how to like be a fantastic team player, either in projects at uni or then when you join any industry that you'd like to join. And yeah, how can you make this clear, maybe in your interview, in your resume? So I see that there is a strong preference for now on the first topic. So perhaps I'll dwell a bit more on that one, and then if there is time, I'll also touch on the second and the third. But yeah, let's focus on the first one. Yeah, I would say that there is a clear a clear winner there. Okay, let's go for the first one. So game development process first. I'll talk mostly from our perspective at Creative Assembly, but trying to take a as general as possible view. So, and if you have questions, put them in chat, and we'll try and answer in the end. So, these are the main steps in the game development process, let's start from the very first. So the if you want the preconception. So when you haven't even pitched the concept to your publisher. So for example, for Creative Assembly, our publisher is Sega. So and since developing a game takes multiple years, you need some strong backing behind you, basically to pay like the salary and the cost of all the people that will work on a game for all these years before it's finally released and you can turn a profit. So you need to have quite a solid foundation because you're asking your investor to put money on something that is risky, especially in today's market. That is quite tricky. You know, there've been a lot of layoffs and challenges across the digital industry in general. So what you need to come up with here is something that is like an elevator pitch of, oh, I've had this great, fantastic idea. How can we turn it into reality? So the theme is the most important bit in the preconception phase, but also like genre, unless you know already. Like for Total War, we're very clear on what our genre is, and in general like the tone of the game. But it's also a good moment to start thinking about look and feel. Any constraint that you might have when working. So do you need to use some specific tools or software? So in TW, in Total War, that's our engine, and it has some great advantages over commercial engines, but also it has some drawbacks because we don't have a huge team like some of these engines. So it won't be on par on all the areas. So, okay, what are your constraints that you need to take into account? And those typically help. So having some constraints for your project typically give you some great starting points to unleash your creativity. Another thing that is good to think about in your preconception phase is timescales. So, how much time do you have, and how big is the game you're developing? So those are the very initial things, and typically at the stage it's a very small team. It might just be like a couple of people. So the ideator of the game might be like might turn into the creative director, or the game director, and yeah, very small group. Then if you move into the light bulb square conception, so at this point you probably pitched your game to a publisher if you're in a publisher studio relationship like us, or if you're like more indie, then it's something that you're probably doing on your own. And in the conception phase, you refine the creative vision, you make a concrete plan for your game. It's the perfect phase for prototyping. So you've probably picked an engine at this stage, so you start creating prototypes, or it can be even paper prototypes. Here in the studio, we have an area with like a table, and the very first stage typically is it looks like a board game if you want. So that's the paper prototype where you put it on actual paper and you try the game mechanics. Is it fun? Do people stop and play? So at this stage, you see that some of your ideas won't work, and that's absolutely fine. So don't be afraid to throw them in the bin and discover what works best for your game. This phase should really be focused on planning, researching your idea and the concept. So what works well in similar games, and what maybe doesn't, or what will make your game different than other games in the genre you have selected. Another important thing is the business model. So, how does it work? Is it a one-off release? Is it a free game? Is it a live game that you'll continue to support post-release? So, these are all important questions that eventually, if you want to look for funding, you will have to answer. In this phase, we also typically have concept art done, so sketches to like set the tone of the overall game. These drawings are really helpful. You see them in movies, in video games, and they provide a visual guide to the overall look and feel. Once the conception phase is done, we start the meaty parts of game development. So pre-production is when the team starts to get bigger, because in this phase, the concept should be established, and then you are scoping technology requirements, so like exact tools that you need, so that art production will begin. And even if you work with an existing engine, there are things that you will have to tweak. So in case you have an in-house engine like us, then people like projects would come saying, oh, we have this vision, your tools support this and this, but we were thinking about something slightly different here. Is it something that we can implement? Or if you're working with a commercial engine, then you might want to make some tweaks and changes to better support your pipelines. In pre-production, you keep outlining the vision of the game, the scope, the requirements, and that is typically put together in what is called a game design document. So that allows everyone reading it to see and understand the scope, the vision of the game, and typically include things like business model that we talked about, the target audience, who is this for? Young, old, gamers, people that love spending hours and hours into building an empire, or people that play quickly or maybe on their mobile and that want to stop at any time. So those are very important questions. The game design document contains the concept, the tone of the game, and so we start also adding story, characters, game mechanics are a very important component of this document, the gameplay, and then all the concept art that you've already built or that you'll keep building at this phase will go into the game design document, any environment art that you will start doing, and finally the level design. So what will the levels look like in your game? Documenting these things is quite important. So as your team will grow, that can be a great onboarding tool. It's good to validate during development that you're still following your main idea, or if you change it, to make sure that you're evolving it. So the game design document is a sum of many like it can be like technical blueprints, proposal for features, systems within the games. So this also creates something that production will need, which is a tool to budget and resource allocation, do resource allocation for your project. So it's really an overarching document. There are also manuals on how to make content, so it can contain things like technical documentation. This is how this feature works. Tutorials on how to make a specific piece of content, and also like the weapon is my game. In my game is a spare. So what are the rules around this weapon? It's very good throughout the whole development of your project to update the game design document so that it remains a live document that you keep being able to refer to and that you can keep using until the release of the game. So pre-production is around figuring things out. What is it that we need from our tools and what is the direction that we're going? When you have figured out all of these things, and typically they don't all happen at the same time. You have some things figured out, some things still a bit blurry. But at a certain point, production should start, and this is where the game is actually made. So you'll create a version of the game, and ideally, if it's like playable and available as soon as possible, and then you keep iterating. That's really great. So yeah, building a first version and then iterating on it is the core of the production phase. In production, you'll create assets, features, content, and all of these should be tested, ideally throughout the duration of the process in um, like early stages. Well, up until a few years ago of game development, you typically create your own game and then try it and test it all in the end. Now we try and have the game available as soon as possible and iterate on testing as you go. And then you should have some clear milestones like alpha, beta, and eventually launch. Um, at this point in production, there are different departments, so the team is much bigger than the start. Obviously, it depends on the size of your game, but if you were one person at the start, in this phase you will need at least 5 people maybe. So artists, designers, programmers, producers. So typically there are many people. If there is a one person team, that is of course also feasible. So the different departments will have different goals. Like art and animation will create characters, the environment, weapons, vehicles, also the user interface, so that they can also pass the feel of the game. And animation, of course, will bring all of these to life. So characters, environment, and stuff. But we will talk about disciplines in a second. Uh, and then design will do a lot of collaboration with other disciplines to iterate on gameplay loops and work like with level designers to make the game more approachable and so forth. The programmers are busy writing all the gameplay code that brings every element of your game to life, and you'll need to iterate on this one too. Audio will think about like different situations and what needs a sound effect, what needs some music. QA, quality assurance, will test, will make sure that the game functions, but also they can be the gatekeeper of quality. So is this game fun? Is this game achieving what it was set in the game design document? So are we still true to our vision? And there are like many things that QA can do at this stage. So like watch out for crashes, or is there any blocker, other errors like with the collision system or with the logic of the game, or visual issues, things that don't look right. Is the audio wrong? Is the game not balanced? Are there compatibility issues between different platforms? So you can see that QA really has to cover a lot of things, and they are a super important partner in game development. Once the first phase of production is done, then you get into the moment in time when you can start releasing early builds for more overall testing. So if you can get your game in the hands of players, that's fantastic. They can help with feedback, and you can work on polishing, balancing, accessibility. Until then, you get to alpha, when all the main features should be in the game at this point, and the whole game should be playable from beginning to end. There might still be some elements that are maybe missing, or placeholder art or audio that is not there, but like the mechanisms and all the functionality should work properly. And then when you get to the beta stage, all the features, assets, content, everything should be incorporated in the game. So at this point, from beta to release, the focus should be enhancing, so tweaking, bug fixing, rather than adding features. So it's really tempting to keep adding things, but that's often how big issues happen in game development, which is, by the way, quite important throughout the whole duration of the process. So, in the whole game development process, you will be very tempted to add features and features and features. So, my recommendation would be to follow like agile principles of, yeah, let's start with something that works, and then we can add one thing at a time until that thing also works, and keep in mind your schedule. Right. So most of the development process is done at this stage. So when alpha, beta are done, you're happy, you continue testing, then it's time to release. So you can you can put your game on a platform like Steam, Epic, or you can share it with if it's like a uni project with people there. So just a reminder that like post-release plan in professional video games is as important as the production period. So, for example, in post-release, you might have a business model that requires you to support the game. So you might have content already planned for after the game, and so this is typically a work that starts even before the game is released. So, or how you're going to take on feedback from players. So after you release the game, you've noticed that some parts are particularly tricky. Maybe you have some telemetry in your game to show that 90% of players die after 6 minutes in a very specific scenario. Okay, that's probably something to address. And any improvement really, like a cleaner UI, we need something that is clearer to use, or we should streamline these mechanics a bit. So improving the game is really important, and today there are some great examples of games that are released in early access and then iterated upon, and I really like this model. It's super strong to validate your vision. So yeah, the players will be the best critics of your game. So the suggestion here: listen to what they're saying. What do they want to see more or less of? And if you have like a live product with the planned content updates, that is also something to look into. So if in post release you have some DLC planned, so that's like downloadable content, which may be free or might be paid for, but this is not just an opportunity to add new content, but also keep the game relevant and like support your game's commercial success if you are if it's something that is supposed to like pay the bill or make some money. And you can also give free content updates, which is a great way to re-engage and retain your audience. Or you might even have planned seasonal releases, so larger releases in a regular cadence to engage the players. Okay, so that's an overview on the game dev process. I haven't been able to keep up with the questions in chat, but luckily we can go through those later. And I see also hands raised, but I suppose we'll get to those at a later stage. Also, unfortunately, the Zoom interface has covered the little arrows at the bottom of the presentation for me to move to the next slide, maybe because there are hands raised. There we go. Fixed it. Okay. We can have a look into careers. Yeah, shall we keep questions at the end? So keep your hand raised if you want, or put questions in chat, and then in the end we'll do some Q&A. So careers. There are many careers, and they're not all listed here, but I'll give a quick overview of the ones listed here. So let's start from the left-hand side. Animation, they're responsible for animating characters, but also other elements in the game. environment. So there are many different type of animators. So each discipline will have some sub-disciplines. So, for example, in animation, you can be a gameplay animator or a cinematic animator. So, there are trailers or cutscenes within the game that you want to bring to life. There are motion capture technicians. So, at Creative Assembly, we're lucky enough to have like a mock-up studio where we can capture movements from real actors so that they can then be more easily and realistically translated into the game. Or there are technical animators, so people who are responsible for rigging characters and skinning, and I can talk about that a bit later. But yeah, that's not the end. There are like cinematics that can look at the direction, the cinematography, acting, storyboarding, or animation can also look at like keyframe animation. So yeah, there are many aspects to this world. Um, Art, the second box, they can create 2D or 3D art. So 2D is typically concept art, and 3D there are models like for characters, creatures, the environment. So 3D environment artists, as they will say, they look after the world. There are UI artists who look after the look of user interface elements, VFX artist, character artist, concept artist, and then technical artists who often look after modeling, texturing, scripting, a bit of scripting and programming with 3D math. Whilst like VFX artists will look after like particle effects, sprite sheets, and so forth. Um, Audio is another big component of games, so it's sometimes underestimated, but a great audio can really bring your game to life. So audio is responsible for the soundscape, and it might be recording sounds for weapons, or sometimes we have sessions here at Creative Assembly where you shout. I was an orc a few months ago. And my throat didn't thank me, but it was really fun. But then like proper voice actors for the main characters and their dialogue. Audio also looks after the music, of course. They edit all these sounds. They implement it in game. And in audio, there are here as well many specialisms. You might want to become a sound designer, or a dialogue engineer, a music designer, an audio QA. So all aspects of game development require some testing. So if you are passionate about testing, you don't need necessarily to be a gameplay tester. You can specialize on audio. Then there are composers, audio directors, and so forth. Um, the fourth box there is design. So design is responsible for making the game fun. They are, if you want, the architect of the gameplay experience. So designers define the rules of the game and the game world. They look after the narrative aspect of the game, and they very often oversee the creative development from the concept phase all the way to release and beyond. So designers could be systems designers who looked after like a whole system in the game, or level designers for if it's a platform game, how do we make this level fun? Where do we put traps and secret passages? There are combat designers who look after all the rules of engagement, weapons and stuff. AI, so there are AI coders we will see when we look at programming, but there are also AI designers, so people that figure out, okay, how should the artificial intelligence think and react here. Narrative designers for the the more narrative aspects of the game. Technical designers are a bit of a bridge between design and code. So they do some coding. They help designers to be more efficient. Writers typically are in the design category, and then also UX designer to make the experience as smooth as possible, and user researcher to look into what people want, what people like to play. Um, the pale blue box there is around the production, which was my discipline when I joined the games industry. So production a bit like project management and Scrum mastery, if you want. So it's around organizing the creation of the game and overseeing the game's development. So typical responsibilities around the business and financial perspective, but in many studios, producers are also looking after the quality of the game, and so helping designers and people making the call around, okay, is this in line with what we want to achieve? So production important skills could be around people management or time management, presenting things to the team or to partner. So communication, experience with agile, like Scrum, is often very beneficial, as agile has pretty much won at the moment the war of the topologies that we can use for digital development. And then programming is responsible for writing the code that bring like game features or the system to life. So they make all those ideas playable, and the end result is a build that you can play the game with. There are many specialism also in programming, so it can be like a gameplay programmer, AI programmer that we mentioned earlier, audio programmers, or tools programmers, like people in my team, or similarly graphics programmers who also look after the engine from a rendering perspective, and all sorts of engine programmers. Um, Very often, game development is done in C++, but it's that's not set in stone. Different companies use different languages. It can be C Sharp, Python, and so forth. But in general, having an analytical mind is what's beneficial for this discipline. QA, quality assurance, they ensure that the product has the right level of quality. So like not just bugs and errors are addressed, but also like user feedback and adherence to the game vision. So we mentioned that there are many different specialisms even in this area. So can be a QA technician, can be also automation engineers, so to write automated tests that can run the game without a manual person going there and testing everything. And the last box on this slide is brand and marketing, which is also a very important partner in game development. So creating like campaigns to present the game to various audiences, highlighting different aspects of the game, but also like gathering data on potential audiences and dealing with reviews, online communities, having like websites, looking after sales platforms, or even face-to-face events. And in brand and marketing, we typically have like brand managers, product managers, community managers, marketing artists, social media managers, PR managers, and so forth. So these are the main disciplines, but there are many more. So every company needs like HR, human resources. So you might have a passion for people and want to become an HR partner working in the games industry or IT. All our machines need to work and run smoothly. So that's also a very important aspect. Web development or DevOps. Business planning. So whatever is needed for any company is also applicable in the games industry. So it's also something that you might want to think about. Oh, I want to have this career, and I can have it in the games industry. Okay, so we covered. Yeah, we spent more than half of our talk on this first topic in that case, and I'll go quite quickly through the other two topics so that we have time for questions in the end, since I've seen a couple of hands raised and some questions being shared. So I believe this was the second most voted topic. So some examples of the of an actual engine. So I don't know if you can see my mouse, but at the bottom we have like what is called the CI/CD pipeline. So it's something that the continuous integration pipeline, but the engine itself is the second bottom layer, where it's called core engine, where we have like a renderer, a database, the audio code, and then at the very top, we have the editors on the left-hand side, so the tools that people use to actually implement the assets that go into the game, for example, and the gameplay framework for all the like more specific gameplay rules. And we've seen how to go through the different game development phases earlier. Now, if we look at the pipelines, yeah, after starting from the game concept, there are some assets on the top section, assets that need to create it, so like word, character, narrative, audio, and on the bottom hand, gameplay. So this is an example of our map editor. I've put here a box of all the disciplines that work on it. Well, sometimes other disciplines even touch this tool, but the ones that use the most could be art, design, animation, audio. So artists would create the base map for this is, for example, a battle, a map for a battle, and then once the environment artists have created a base, there would be art who had things like special buildings and points of interest. Sound will okay, there is a waterfall or a forest, so they will add sound component in this map editor, and VFX artist will do a pass to add like I don't know, there is magic to show or even natural like fire, natural elements that require some VFX in there. And then design will also add some more like oh, this is an ambush zone and this is a playable area. Oh dear, zoom. There we go. And yeah, I'll go quickly through this since we mentioned that this is not the most voted topic. So an example, the red square at the center, that's the playable area for a Total War battle map. Then the green is like what you can see, and then the big red box is the outfield, so something that is just on the background. So you can see how much work goes into a map. Of course, you're going to spend most of your effort in the red box, but yeah, it's making games is quite a long process. Then in terms of pipelines, if you look at Caratex, for example, it's a very good partnership between art, so like character artist, and animation. And I mentioned earlier, like tech animators who create the skeleton and the rigs, so how the joints move of a character, and work with character artists to add the meshes and the meat on the character, how the the joints bend. There are some clever algorithms so that if your camera is very zoomed in, you can see the most detailed version of the character. And as you zoom out, we remove some details so that the renderer and the performance of the game are not suffering, because you can see, like, if we zoom out, this is me simulating us zooming out. So on at the bottom here, you almost see no difference. And then when it's this small, there is no point in rendering something with so many triangles. Here on the left, we go for something which is very high level. Um, and uh, um, and then in terms of VFX, there is typically a design plan. So for Warhammer, we might say, hey, you know what, we need blessings and we need spells that target a specific area. There is a plan that lists for like each faction. Oh, these are all the things that we need to think about. Then there will be some concept art around design. So, okay, humans will use this color scheme, and that spell will look like that. A similar one for orcs will be green, and then one for demons will instead be red and fiery. So concept art is very important. It's also important to validate against like the lore of that intellectual property, and then the assets are created in the game. So like Houdini or 3ds Max are often used for meshes and models, and then textures to apply, often done in Photoshop, and materials and shaders that in our case use our own engine tools. And those VFXs are then put into the game. So like the gameplay ability we add it to the database, or they might go in a cinematic scene, or they might be in the map editor that we've seen earlier. So I think it's probably best if we stop here. The last one are some quick tips about team dynamics. So the first tip I'll give you, and maybe the only one, will be fight, but in terms of conflict. So interpersonal conflict is super important. Sorry, what am I talking about? Task conflict is super important when you work on a project. So as humans, we are typically conflict adverse, but my invite would be don't be afraid of disagreeing with people. Of course, being polite, of course, keeping not personal, but disagreeing is what builds trust. So you cannot build trust if you fear of being abandoned or hurt. If you're like if you disagree and that doesn't work. So that's the most important bit. I think we have 1 minute left. So ask questions if you don't get something. It's that's super important. Supportive communication. So high-performing teams spend about 20% of their communication is supportive. Like, oh, that was a great idea. It's something that often you think about, but you don't tell people. So my invite would be go and tell them if they've had a great idea. And yeah, there are some tips around how to put it in your CV. For example, you might say that you're passionate about something, or that you have experience from uni projects, or that you've studied like team dynamics and stages of group development and so forth.